The media has constantly hammered Tesla on upcoming competition from big automakers, how they're going to destroy Tesla's cars and take over the world. But after the media got bullish on Tesla, they really stopped talking about this competition, and now this is something we have to research ourselves. Let's start with the upcoming competitors to the Tesla Cybertruck. The pickup truck market is humongous, and there are many automakers trying to take a stab in this industry. One of these competitors is General Motors, releasing the GMC Hummer expected to be available by fall 2021. They actually had a Super Bowl ad featuring LeBron James. So let's take a look at basically the specs of this car released in the ad and whether this will be a strong competitor to the Cybertruck, which is also expected to be released by 2021.
I've been a fan of GMC for quite a while now, and the opportunity presented itself. It was very organic. It's rare that you have a vehicle that's this big, that's this powerful, be this quiet. We can get from 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. That's extreme. That's nuts. Zero limits. Zero compromises. Anytime I have any type of partnership, it's always pretty simple. Anything that's organic, anything that's something that I have a good deal of respect for. GMC Hummer EV.
So the specs in this car is actually quite great. With the 0 to 60 of 3 seconds, that puts it as around the same as the best Cybertruck, the Tri-Motor AWD, which has an expected 0 to 60 of 2.9 seconds. The problem is, we're not given the range of this car or the price. Some websites are guessing a range of 300 miles and a price of $70,000. And if the estimate of a 300 mile range is true, this really isn't that good compared to the Tri-Motor AWD Cybertruck, which is expected to have a range of 500 plus miles. But for GM, I do have to say this is pretty great progress, and that's a pretty good 0 to 60, but definitely not good enough to beat the Cybertruck. With that being said, let's move on to the next car, and this is none other than the Nikola Badger, which actually has a range of 600 miles. But there is a huge knockback to this car. 300 miles of that range is electric, but the other 300 is hydrogen powered. And this hydrogen storage is very hard to fill up. Unless you're living in California, it's pretty hard to charge up your hydrogen powered car. There just aren't enough hydrogen chargers, but Nikola is expected to place more of these hydrogen chargers around the United States. But looking at the other numbers, they do actually look pretty promising. The 0 to 60 is a claimed 2.9 seconds and a towing capacity of 8,000 pounds, peak horsepower of 906. We don't know how much this pickup truck costs, therefore we just don't know what to compare it with. For all we know, the Tri-Motor AWD Cybertruck could be a lot cheaper than this Nikola Badger. I also talked about the Rivian R1T in the part 1 of this video, so if you want to check that out, I'll have the link in the description below. But basically, a summary of the Rivian R1T, the specs are pretty great, but we don't know the price levels for each different model of the Rivian R1T. So again, we're running to the same issue, where yes, we do know that the Rivian R1T's base model will cost $69,000, but as far as the higher models, which have a claimed 400 plus range for the long performance one, we just don't know the price of these, and these automakers just aren't telling us what the price is. So now that we've gone over basically all the upcoming competitors to Tesla's Cybertruck, let's talk about the Model Y, which should be released in the closer span of time than the Cybertruck. The first car on this list is a Lexus UX300E crossover. What's funny about this car is that the automaker initially said that it would be able to drive 250 miles in a single charge, but after being retested by the WLTP, the new standards actually say that the range will be 186 miles. So that's seriously a huge cut for Lexus right there, but it's definitely not a surprise when you consider that the battery is a 54.3 kilowatt hour battery. The car is also expected to have a 201 horsepower and a maximum torque output of 221 pounds. Along with that, its 0 to 60 currently sits at 7.5 seconds, and its top speed sits at 100 miles an hour. The Lexus UX300E is not expected to be released in the US yet, but it is going to retail for 40,000 euros in the UK and Germany and around 50,000 euros in the Netherlands. So the range really isn't that great for such an expensive car, but it is Lexus's first EV, so it's not a surprise that we're not seeing competitor of Tesla yet. And the next car on this list is the BMW iX3. The motor of the car will deliver 286 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of instant torque, and the battery pack will provide 273 miles of range. That range of 273 miles is likely hugely optimistic, as in that WLTP testing cycle, they were just putting out numbers much higher than the actual range, and the EPA should give it a range of around 250 miles. This is what all the websites are expecting, and this was definitely a huge fault by the WLTP, giving out these huge overestimated numbers for ranges. The EPA backed that number is usually the more reliable range, so we're going to have to wait and see when the EPA tests this BMW iX3, but just know that it's likely going to be lower than the WLTP range. What's special about this car is that this will be BMW's first car that will be made in China, delivered to the US, and sold in the US. This could be a move on cheaper transportation costs, and also maybe an anticipation to the US-China trade war getting better in the future. Similar to all the other automakers in this list, BMW didn't tell us what the price of the iX3 will be. But because in most electric vehicles they have conventional counterparts, the iX3 is estimated to be around $50,000 to $60,000, as the X3 is priced at $41,000. The 0 to 60 of this car is currently at 4.8 seconds, and with the specs that the BMW iX3 has right now, I don't think this will be the Model Y for a few major reasons. If we simply take a look at the specs, the Model Y just has better specs. The Model Y 0 to 60 is at 3.5 seconds versus the BMW iX3 at 4.8 seconds. Its range is 315 miles, which is much higher than the BMW iX3. But a big point that I haven't made in this video is that Tesla has all these other advantages to their cars. We're talking about the massive supercharging network, self-driving, Sentry mode, even Netflix. All these kind of things that aren't in the peer numbers. They aren't in the specs. And if we add that on top of the fact that Model Y just has better specs, I just don't see the BMW iX3 beating the Model Y. And I feel like the car with the best chance of going against the Model Y is a Ford Mustang Mach-E. Another car I talked about in the first version of this video. The first edition AWD Ford Mustang Mach-E has a 300 mile range, which is actually not bad for the higher version, and a 3 second 0 to 60. This is actually better than the Model Y with a 3.5 second 0 to 60. This first edition Mustang Mach-E retails for $59,900. And the reason why I think this may be pretty good initially is because of the $7,500 federal tax credit, which many of you guys know, Tesla already used up all these $7,500 federal tax credits, but Ford still has them, and as a result, there is actually quite a lot of demand for the first edition AWD, with all the reservations already full. And if you noticed, the information I gave you was actually false. This is basically Ford's type of marketing. If you go on their website, it actually says the Ford Mustang Mach-E has a 300 mile range, 3 second 0 to 60. So why am I saying this information is false? And that's because if you look closer, this information is actually not true. The specs they show on the cover of the website are the best specs when we're talking about every single model. The longest range model, the model with the quickest 0 to 60, essentially all these specs combined to make it seem like it's one car that has all these great specs. And I do admit that although this is somewhat false, it does work pretty well as a marketing tactic. Now let's take a look at the actual specs. The first edition is expected to have a 270 mile range and a 5 second 0 to 60. You can see that this is a huge downgrade from what the homepage says. And although this is somewhat of a scam, I do have to say this is some great improvement from Ford, and it might actually be the first car that gets some decent sales in the electric vehicle area made by an automaker not called Tesla. And this makes sense why Elon Musk ended up boosting the range of the Model Y to 315 miles, basically to make that small boost in order to beat the Mustang Mach-E. Initially, it might get a lot of sales because of the $7,500 federal tax credit. However, in the long run, I still see the Model Y as the better car out of the two, because one, it just has slightly better specs, and two, Ford doesn't have all the benefits that I mentioned earlier, Sentry mode, autopilot, and Ford did add a 15.5 inch screen on the Ford Mustang Mach-E, so we're going to see how that plays out for the car. So now let's move on to the Volkswagen Space Vision EV. This car is expected to be released by 2022, and has a range of 350 miles, 0 to 60 not yet announced, top speed of 112 miles, and a battery pack capacity of 111 kilowatt hours. These are quite promising specs, but the problem is, what is the cost of the vehicle? This is a question we're constantly asking for all these upcoming EVs. What is the price of the vehicle? So with the given specs, I just don't know what to compare this with, but with a range of 350 miles, this is definitely going to be a luxury car. So with that being said, let's move on to more of the Model 3 competitors. And one of the best competitors to the Model 3 is the BMW i4. The BMW i4 specs are incredibly promising, with an 80 kilowatt hour battery somehow producing a 373 mile range and 530 horsepower. This will utilize BMW's so-called Generation 5 battery packs, significantly smaller than the Generation 3 and Generation 4 battery packs currently used in the company's EVs. The BMW i4 is expected to have a 0 to 60 of 4 seconds, which is slower than the 0 to 60 of the Model 3, except the Model 3 does have a 322 mile range, which is a lot less than BMW i4's range of 373 miles, exactly the same as the current Model S. The price isn't announced yet, but we're expected to see this be around $50,000. But the thing is, the car isn't going to start getting produced until 2021, so we're going to have to wait and see if Tesla improves the Model 3. But this will definitely be a fantastic car because of its high range of 373 miles. And while we're still waiting for the price, if this is truly priced at $50,000, this car could be able to steal some EV sales from Tesla. So that's going to wrap up this video. There's still a lot of other cars I want to talk about. So if you want a part 3 of this video, please hit that like button and subscribe so I know you guys want more videos like this. Also comment down below if you have any video ideas or tell me what you guys think about this, because I do read every single comment. And with that being said, I hope to see you in another video.